Hear the music.
The protagonist, the character that the audience gravitates to. The protagonist drives the narrative's overarching theme. Merriam-Webster defines the character as the first struggler, which is derived from the Greek word protagonistis. They struggle and try to overcome against something or someone, maybe even themselves. The protagonist has been interpreted through all forms of media, from mangas to movies, but not every character falls in line as a well-written character. So what makes the perfect protagonist? Obviously, searching for the perfect protagonist is too much work because of the sheer amount of protagonists in media, so I'm going to narrow my list to a specific genre of media. Game protagonist.
I kill people. And maybe I should have killed you. Should I have killed you, Jimmy Brooks?
I think we can all agree that Arthur Morgan is one of the greatest protagonists in gaming. Hell, fiction. But does that qualify him as the struggler protagonist? Technically yes, but also no. Now I know you'll go and rage in the comments, and before you do, let me say that Red Dead Redemption is one of my favorite games of all time. And also, these are my opinions and they are fully subjective. So why don't I qualify him as the struggler protagonist? Well, because he's very similar to John Marston from the first game. And I don't mean personality or skills, I mean their circumstances. They both die by betrayal, although one died by tuberculosis and the other died by rivers of bullets. Even when you have high honor, you still die in both games, which is not very struggler protagonist-esque. So Arthur Morgan is technically by definition a tragic protagonist, which means that no matter how virtuous or heroic the protagonist is, they will ultimately suffer or die, which is a very good representation since the game is literally called Red Dead Redemption. I'm not saying that Arthur doesn't struggle, but Arthur isn't a struggler protagonist, since he dies in the end, which would happen to a tragic protagonist. Well, if Arthur isn't the perfect struggler protagonist, who is? Could it be...
Zeus, your son has returned! I bring the destruction of Olympus!
Kratos, Ghost of Sparta, God of War, and God Killer. With this many titles, surely he must be the perfect protagonist. He lost his brother at a young age, no father, dead mother, grew up as a Spartan, which if you didn't know, life as a Spartan is one of the most grueling and grim life a soldier can live. He made a deal with Ares, who was the previous God of War, and sold his soul for him. Kratos followed his every command, and one day Ares ordered him to raid a village. Unbeknownst to Kratos, his wife and daughter was also there, and as Kratos ravaged the village like a serial killer, he accidentally killed them, and the oracle placed a curse on him where his skin turned to white, made by the ashes of his family, so he would forever remember his mistake. It's a long story, so I won't go over every detail, but till now it seems like he's the perfect candidate for the struggler protagonist. But obviously you can tell there's a but. So what's the counter argument? Well, it's the fact that he's the God of War. When it comes to his strength and endurance, no one comes close to his level. He does struggle, but his struggle is the pursuit of revenge. His whole character is revolved around killing the gods who used him. The entirety of God of War 3 is a killing spree on the gods. He doesn't change or is punished by his actions. Hell, he sometimes gets rewarded. Now when God of War came out in 2018, I was jaw-dropped by every element the game presented. Not in all my years would I expect to feel sympathy for the Ghost of Sparta. As soon as you can see him in the title screen, you can clearly understand that this isn't the same Kratos as we first knew in the older games. He's calm and collected. He's not filled with rage. Although he's, in my opinion, one of the greatest protagonists in gaming, the same problem is still there. He's not a struggler protagonist. He does change as a father and as a friend, but he doesn't overcome obstacles with much difficulty. Anyone who tries to kill him are the same people who are 6 feet under. Kratos is and always will be the strongest, and I love how Cory Barlog represented him as the strongest without him just being a mindless brute who kills anyone who crosses with him. Kratos has changed for the better. Even in God of War Valhalla, he's no longer an anti-hero, but now somewhat of a struggler, since he tries to move move on and be worthy of the name the God of War. But that alone doesn't make him the perfect protagonist. Damn, I thought I had it this time. Maybe there isn't an ideal struggle or protagonist that fits my Wait, yes there is. $80 samurais are pitted against an army to slow the Mongol invasion. As you can imagine, they lost. The samurais live by a code of honor and sometimes die by it. They serve their lord with unwavering loyalty and bring order to Japan to set an example for the people. One of the guidelines of the code is to never strike from the shadows or use deceiving tactics like poison. Lord Shimura was captured by Khotun Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan. If you know the history of Genghis Khan, you'll know that one of his rare traits was his adaptability. He welcomed advice from different sources and was open to learning several cultures with each battle to use as his advantage. Khotun Khan was no exception, since as he said, he learned their languages, beliefs and traditions. He knows which villages to tame and which to burn. This is not just an antagonist that conquers and pillages. He is a formidable opponent that knows the enemy and how to deal with him. So obviously it's gonna be hard to defeat a cunning and ruthless warlord like him. It will be a struggle. Jin Sakai is an interesting protagonist because of how much he changes throughout the game. He fought the Khan to save his uncle but lost miserably. He realized that he has never fought someone stronger than him. He felt weak. His whole life he lived by a code of honor and accepted that he would die by it. But as he realized that his code wouldn't be enough to save his uncle and his people, he had no choice but to resort to deceitful tactics. He felt ashamed as he watched the dead Mongol he assassinated with questioned morality. Even as you, the player, assassinate Mongols, Jin will comment on it depending on how many times he broke his code. At first he'll try to cope with it, but as he assassinates more he'll stay quiet, showing that he accepts his newfound persona as the ghost. He questions his identity, but ultimately does whatever it takes to save his people. He might be a traitor to the samurais, his clan, and most of all his uncle, but he did what he had to do to stop his people from dying. He is, by the eyes of the people, a hero. Is his actions morally questionable? Yes. Did he save his people? Yes. His blacksmith, who idolized him and wanted to be like him, died because of him, because he was the ghost. He could have stopped being the ghost and went back as an honorable samurai, but knew that if he did, it would mean the death of his people and his country. He doesn't enjoy being the ghost, but he does what it takes to rebel against the Mongols. This doesn't mean that being deceitful is always advantageous to him, as he poisoned the milk supply of a Mongol fortress. The Khan, like the cunning man he is, used it against him, making him an even more difficult opponent. Still, even after Jin was imprisoned by his uncle and escaped with his loyal but wounded horse, he still had to make it north, which was no easy feat, and as his horse drew his final breath, he had to make it on foot with no weapons or armor, showing the limits he would surpass for his people even if it was questionably moral. The Khan tries to break him, but Jin has broken every rule to save his people. To the Khan's eyes, he is an indomitable warrior who has no limits. His people follow him for protection and guidance, but as they disobeyed the shoguns because of of Jin, who's to say that they won't do the same to him? Damn, that rhymed. Now here comes the overarching question. Is he the perfect struggler protagonist? To me, absolutely. No other character has shown such an unwavering spirit and loyalty as Jin Sakai. Although his actions are questionably moral, he struggled mentally and spiritually and has always surpassed his limits through sheer will, making him, in my opinion, the perfect protagonist. Also, you could pet animals. Like, comment, and subscribe.